I'm Skylar Jenkins, 30, a restaurant manager in Seattle. My home was quiet after a long shift. Then Ethan, my brother, called. I picked up, expecting his usual request for a loan. But what he actually said was chilling. This wasn't a request, it was an act of cold, calculated possession. Chloe and I are moving into the beach house this Friday. Mom agreed and gave us the security code. My $480,000 vacation home. He was talking about my life's work as if it were a shared apartment. The immediate sense of violation was overwhelming. To understand the shock of that phone call, you have to understand the dynamic of the Jenkins family. I, Skylar, was the self-starter. By 30, I was a successful restaurant manager in Seattle, routinely putting in 60-hour weeks. I loved the grind, the control. My success was built on sweat, calculation, and extreme personal discipline. I had zero illusions about what it took to get ahead. Then there was Ethan. He was perpetually the golden boy who never quite managed to shine. He floated through life, struggling with debt, losing jobs, a retail stint here, a failed online business there. His life was a series of almosts and excuses. He never learned the fundamental truth: effort equals outcome. His failures were expensive, my success was exhausting. This context, my tireless work versus his endless excuses, is why their invasion was so potent. It wasn't just my house they wanted, it was my earned stability. How could my family possibly see these two paths and still justify taking mine? I achieved financial independence through sheer brute force. That beach house? It was the direct result of 7 years of 80-hour weeks, double shifts, and skipping every holiday. When I closed on it, there was no family celebration, just a relieved sigh that I had finally built my safety net. I paid for my independence not just with money, but with my time and my emotional isolation. My success was seen as my burden, not my triumph. In the Jenkins family, I wasn't the daughter or sister, I was the resource. The one who always had the long hours, the steady paycheck, the too much that could be redistributed to Ethan. My achievements were simply prerequisites for my next bailout. I was the reliable backup system, never the star player. They overlooked me until they needed to look at my bank account. They always ignored my boundaries. Now, they weren't just asking for money, they were trying to take my sanctuary. How far do you let your family push you before you finally say no? You're about to find out exactly where I drew that line. The pattern of financial exploitation didn't start with the beach house, it began when I was 16. I was bussing tables, saving every dollar for my first college application fees. I had meticulously saved $3,000, a fortune to a kid. It wasn't just money, it was freedom, a ticket out of that house. I earned every cent the hard way, thinking I was building security. My savings account was my escape plan. Then Ethan totaled his beat-up car and couldn't pay the loan. My mother, without a single discussion, took my bank card and emptied $3,000 to cover his debt. Family helps family, Skylar. He needs it more, she said. That was the first time I realized my hard work was seen as a collective family fund, specifically for Ethan's mistakes. It was a direct lesson in my expendability. How many times do you let someone steal your future before you lock the vault? Their demands escalated from private phone calls to public confrontations. I was 20, working as a junior manager, proud of my first uniform and my growing responsibility. Then Mom walked in, demanding to speak to me now, loudly enough for the whole floor to hear. She wanted me to co-sign a loan for Ethan's new business venture, which was clearly a scam. She leveraged my professional pride against my family obligation. My workplace, my sanctuary, was violated. You earn such good money, Skylar. Why are you hoarding it when your brother needs a breakthrough? You're too selfish, working all the time for yourself. Family always comes first. That moment stung. She wasn't seeing a successful daughter. She saw a cash machine failing to dispense. The message was clear: My ambition was a flaw, not a virtue. I realized my greatest enemy wasn't out there, it was within my own home. I refused to co-sign that day, but the damage was done. The feeling of being publicly shamed for my financial prudence fueled a deep resentment. How do you keep building your life when the people closest to you are constantly trying to tear it down? Their interference didn't break me, it sharpened me. Every time my mother or Ethan pushed, I worked harder. They told me I was selfish, I heard that I was self-reliant. I turned that stolen college money into an associate's degree, paid for by endless night shifts. My determination became my armor. I refused to let their financial drama define my trajectory. I learned to save in secret, to thrive in silence. That discipline led to the beach house, my true sanctuary. It was my physical proof that I could create a safe space completely outside their reach. It wasn't just an asset, it was a psychological barrier. I bought it, furnished it, and kept it secret for months. It represented everything I had earned that they hadn't taken. But how long could I keep my secret safe from the family vault raiders? Every family dinner became a stage for my achievements to be minimized. When I got promoted to senior manager, my mother's response was, "That's nice, but Ethan is working on an exciting crypto investment. You know, real money." My hard-won title was a footnote, Ethan's failed venture was the headline. They viewed my success as mere luck or a distraction from my real job, supporting him. My competence was treated as an unfair advantage. The worst was the comparison. Skylar is so rigid with her budget, Ethan is the creative one, the risk-taker. They romanticized his recklessness while demonizing my discipline. They painted me as the cold, calculating one, precisely because I didn't hand over my savings the moment they asked. It was psychological warfare designed to guilt me into compliance. My value was determined by my proximity to Ethan's needs. I learned that no amount of success would earn their praise, only their entitlement. The $480,000 beach house wasn't a win to them, it was an untapped resource. This lifetime of being overlooked, undermined, and exploited all led to that phone call. When do you finally stop seeking validation and start demanding respect? I immediately hung up on Ethan and called Mom. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a lifetime of suppressed rage boiling over. "Mom, did you give Ethan the security code for my beach house? Did you tell him he could move in?" The silence on the other end was my answer, a deafening admission of guilt. The casualness of their theft was the most insulting part. I waited for the denial, I got the justification. "Skylar, don't be dramatic." "Of course, I did. You are being completely selfish. You work all the time, that beautiful house is just sitting empty. Ethan and Chloe need a place to regroup before they lose everything. This is what family does." The word selfish, that old familiar trigger, hit me like a physical blow. My achievement was, once again, reframed as my moral failing. I couldn't believe the level of entitlement. "But Mom, I own that property. You can't just give away my assets." "Moem, cutting her off, it's just for a few months, Skylar. They're already on the road. They'll be there by Friday evening. They need this. You need to grow up and share." She confirmed it. Ethan was already en route, the betrayal was total, and my mother was the architect. The final nail in the coffin of family obligation was hammered in. But in that instant, something shifted. The desperation transformed into a cold, lethal resolve. What is the breaking point that turns a daughter into a strategist? "You have too much, Skylar. A whole house just for vacations, while your brother is about to be homeless. Is that fair? You have the security, the money, the career. Ethan needs a leg up. You should be grateful you're in a position to help." Her tone wasn't pleading, it was commanding. She didn't see an imbalance of effort, only an imbalance of assets to be corrected. My existence was a continuous liability to their narrative. That sentence, "You have too much," validated everything I had ever felt, that my success was a crime, and my boundaries were invisible. They didn't see the years of sacrifice, the missed birthdays, the sheer terror of climbing out of poverty. They only saw a door they hadn't yet forced open. I realized the family didn't respect me, they merely tolerated me as a source of funds. This was the moment of complete, painful clarity. I ended the conversation abruptly. I wasn't going to argue ethics with a thief. Ethan and Chloe were 3 hours into a drive toward my property, armed with a stolen code. I had less than 24 hours to secure my border. The emotional collapse could wait. What technical defense can stop an entitled family member dead in their tracks? My strategy began the second I hung up. The time for kindness was officially over. I calculated the distance. From their last known location to my beach house was a 5-hour drive, minimum. They were already 3 hours in. That left me with about 2 hours of breathing room, 2 hours before they arrived, expecting to walk right into my property. The deadline was real, and the stakes were higher than ever. This wasn't just a race against time, it was a battle for my sanity. Every minute ticking by fueled my adrenaline. I looked at the deed for the beach house. My name, and only my name, was on that paper. This property was my retirement fund, my only true escape hatch, and the material proof that I had succeeded on my own terms. The thought of Ethan's dirty shoes and Chloe's dog running through my meticulously cleaned sanctuary sent a genuine panic through me. It felt like they were about to defile my success. I had to protect my boundaries, physical and emotional. Panic wouldn't help. I switched into manager mode, the one that handles kitchen fires and double bookings. First, the security system. I pulled up the Homes app. Did I have remote access to the locks? Yes. Can I change the access code now? Yes. Was the alarm system armed? Yes. I was mapping out my revenge not on a battlefield, but on a smart device. They underestimated my professional capacity for detail. I could visualize them, Ethan, sitting smugly in the passenger seat, already planning which corner of my living room he'd claim for his latest failed business setup. The sheer entitlement radiating from him was palpable, even across 200 miles. He thought he was walking into a sure thing, a family handout. He didn't know I had just installed a high-tech fortress around that handout. He was driving into my trap, and the engine was running. My immediate goal was simple: make the original security code, the one my mother illegally shared, null and void. I had to ensure that when Ethan reached that door, his stolen access was meaningless. Every tap on my screen was a nail in the coffin of their family narrative. I wasn't just changing a code, I was redefining the terms of our relationship. I had the power now, the remote control over their immediate future. But would activating the defense be enough, or was I setting myself up for an even bigger family war? The digital lockdown was about to begin. Just as I was about to execute the lockdown sequence, the dam broke. The adrenaline crash hit, and I sunk onto the floor. It wasn't about the $480,000 house anymore. It was the realization that after 30 years of trying, I still hadn't earned their respect. All my discipline, all my independence, it was all meaningless to them, just a reservoir to be drained. My body shook with the weight of that lifelong dismissal. I thought about the promotions they never mentioned, the financial goals they openly mocked, the moments I stood strong when Ethan fell. All of it was summarily dismissed by 2 words: Mom agreed. My mother's authorization to give away my property was the ultimate erasure of my achievements. My identity as a hardworking, self-made woman was nullified by her entitlement. I was disposable. That was their truth. The tears lasted 30 seconds. Then the anger, cold and precise, took over. This was no longer about a debt or a shared family car. This was about my right to exist without being exploited. They had handed me the exact emotional fuel I needed for the absolute, unyielding defense of my boundaries. My despair was now weaponized. They wanted a free vacation. I was giving them a permanent lesson in property law. The time for self-pity was over. The time for the manager to clock in began. I went back to the app. The key was to ensure the denial of entry was clean, legal, and undeniable. I needed no physical confrontation, only an unbreachable technological barrier. I mentally rehearsed the steps: new code, remote lock activation, and the final, crucial step, the activation of the trespass protocol. They wanted to treat my house like a hotel. I would treat them like intruders. They were about to realize that a manager of a restaurant knows exactly how to handle unwanted guests. What happens when the resource finally decides to cut off the supply line entirely? There was no going back. The next few clicks would change the dynamic of my family forever. It was a calculated risk, but the alternative, letting them destroy my stability, was worse. My finger hovered over the engage button. My vengeance was going to be automated, digital, and deeply satisfying. The firewall was about to be erected. I closed the door on the emotional drama. My mother and Ethan had made their move, violating my trust and my property rights. I realized I couldn't argue my way out of this. I had to defend my way out. The time for pleading was over. This was a hostile corporate takeover attempt, and I was the sole shareholder defending my assets. My goal was no longer reconciliation, but absolute, non-negotiable security. I had to stop being the daughter and start being the CEO. Fortunately, I had invested heavily in security for the beach house. I bought the system not just for burglar protection, but specifically because it offered robust remote management. I had the ability to control every deadbolt, every window sensor, and the alarm siren, all from my phone in Seattle. I wasn't relying on physical force. I was relying on my investment in technology. My paranoia was finally paying dividends. Step 1: change the door code. The key given by my mother was instantly rendered obsolete. A single tap, a 4-digit change, and the physical barrier was restored. They could drive 200 miles, but they couldn't breach the most basic line of defense. It was a digital lock on a decades-long pattern of entitlement. It felt incredibly satisfying to invalidate their access with such ease. The $480,000 house was back under my sole command. Step 2: arm the entire alarm system. I switched the status from disarmed to maximum security away. This activated the perimeter alerts, motion sensors, and the full siren protocol. If Ethan tried to use the old code, or even attempted to force entry, the local police department would be notified instantly. The boundaries were not just emotional anymore, they were legally protected. I was turning my home into a legitimate fortress. Step 3: customize the trespassing alert protocol. I set the system to immediately notify me and the security company if any unauthorized attempt was made to enter, even a key swipe. This was the contingency plan for their entitlement. They could claim family rights all they wanted. The system would recognize them only as trespassers. Their emotional narrative was meeting my technological reality. I was leaving zero room for negotiation or excuses. It was done. The house was secured, the codes were changed, and the alarm was active. The physical distance between Seattle and the beach house no longer mattered. I held absolute, digital control. My anxiety didn't vanish, but it was replaced by a sense of self-reliance and profound courage. I had finally, fully, put myself first. They were hurtling towards a locked door, and I held the only key. What will they do when their oldest trick, entitlement, stops working entirely? I stared at the app, watching the little blue dot, Ethan's phone, getting closer and closer to my property boundary. I had approximately 10 minutes left. The silence in my apartment was deafening, the only sound the faint whir of my laptop. I hadn't moved from my spot. This wasn't a game, it was the final stand for my self-respect, mediated by GPS. I was calm, detached, and fully prepared to watch the fireworks. Then, on the camera feed, a beat-up sedan turned onto the driveway. There they were, Ethan, looking smug, and Chloe, dragging a large, ugly dog out of the back. They looked exactly like the entitled guests I expected. They were unloading the first box, oblivious to the fact that they were already standing on legally protected ground. They came to take my home, but I was about to give them a harsh welcome. They were happy. That wouldn't last. Ethan swaggered to the front door keypad, the one I had just reprogrammed, and confidently punched in the old security code my mother gave him. The light flashed red. He tried again. Red. The confusion on his face was the purest form of victory I could have imagined. He was denied access by the very technology one had meticulously paid for and maintained. The $480,000 question, did he bring a locksmith? I watched him immediately pull out his phone and call Mom, clearly complaining that the code didn't work. On my own phone, the trespassing alert protocol activated, a quiet ding that confirmed my defense was holding strong. They were trapped between their expectation and my reality. I knew Mom would be calling me next, but for once, I was dictating the terms. I had the remote, they had the rising panic. When Ethan got desperate and started physically rattling the door handle, I didn't hesitate. I tapped the final icon, activate siren. The high-pitched, piercing alarm screamed across the quiet neighborhood. Ethan and Chloe visibly jumped back, their dog barking frantically. The local residents were now officially alerted to the trespassers. The message was sent, "You are not welcome. You are criminals." Their grand entrance had become a public disturbance. The phone rang immediately, the security company. I calmly confirmed the alarm was real and that the individuals were trespassing against my direct order. The automatic police dispatch was confirmed. Ethan and Chloe were now facing legal repercussions, not just a locked door. They had 2 minutes until the police arrived. How will the entitled golden boy react when his free ride ends in handcuffs? I muted the screaming siren on my end, focusing on Ethan's face in the camera feed. He was in full meltdown mode, screaming into his phone at Mom, throwing his hands up in theatrical despair. He couldn't comprehend that his usual manipulation tactics, the poor me act, had zero effect on a piece of smart technology. He was realizing the lock wasn't physical, it was financial, and it was absolute. His entitlement was now his humiliation. Chloe, meanwhile, was clearly panicking about the police. She was dragging the moving boxes back into the sedan, trying to physically pull Ethan away from the house. She had a dog, a car full of junk, and a rapidly escalating legal problem. She wasn't an innocent bystander. She was an accomplice whose entitled weekend getaway had just turned into a police investigation. The chaos they sought to avoid had followed them directly to my property. I saw the flashing lights first, blue and red slicing through the evening gloom. The local police cruiser pulled up the driveway, lights blazing. The sound of the alarm was instantly overshadowed by the sound of authority. Ethan stopped screaming and looked exactly like what he was, a thief caught in the act. I took a slow, deep breath. This was the moment I had earned. No more arguments. Just consequences. I watched as the officers approached. Ethan immediately started his sob story, pointing at the house, pointing at the alarm. One officer, however, remained totally unconvinced, radioing in the situation. I knew exactly what they were hearing from dispatch. The owner of the property, Skylar Jenkins, confirmed the alarm and filed a report of attempted trespassing. The law, for once, was squarely on my side. The final scene played out like a perfectly scripted revenge fantasy. Ethan, dejected, having to repack his belongings in the dark, under the scrutiny of the police, his entitlement completely shattered. He didn't get the house, he didn't get the sympathy, and he certainly didn't get the money. He got the police. This wasn't just a win, it was the clearest, most definitive boundary I had ever set. The family was about to find out what happened when I stopped being the daughter and started being the property owner. How far will Mom go to defend her golden boy now? I closed the laptop, cutting off the visual confirmation of my victory. The silence that followed was heavy, not with peace, but with the weight of consequence. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind a cold, hollow space. I had won the battle, secured the property, and asserted my rights. But at that moment, the victory felt less like justice and more like a final, painful severance. The firewall held, but the foundation of my family was gone. I hadn't just denied entry to Ethan and Chloe, I had severed the last, thin thread of the family I used to cling to. I grieved for the childhood illusion, the idea that maybe, one day, they would see me, value me, and stop prioritizing their chaos over my stability. That dream died a screaming, police siren death on the driveway of my beach house. Vindication came with a heavy price tag, loneliness. I let myself cry. But these weren't tears of sadness for the loss of a family, they were tears of rage for the injustice, and tears of profound relief for finally fighting back. I realized that my self-respect was the only currency that truly mattered. I traded their conditional love for my unconditional freedom. And that was the best financial decision I had ever made. I was finally an adult, free from their emotional debt. The next sound was inevitable, my phone. Mom's name flashed across the screen, her face contorted in anger and shock. She was no longer calling to ask for a favor, she was calling to issue a threat, to demand an explanation for the unbelievable humiliation I had just inflicted. She didn't get it, I had just given her the clearest explanation possible. I let it ring once, savoring the silence before the storm. I knew this call would be the real final confrontation, the final argument over who I was and what I owed them. But I wasn't afraid. I had secured my perimeter. I had the legal documents. I had the police report. I had all the evidence of my self-made success and their toxic entitlement. I was ready to face the music, because for once, I was conducting the orchestra. I took a breath and answered the phone. "Hello, Mom." My voice was steady, calm, and utterly devoid of the daughter she thought she knew. The sound of her shocked rage immediately filled the receiver. The revenge was complete, but the story of the fallout and the final conversation was just beginning. What was said in that ultimate call, and did I ever speak to my brother again? Moem, screaming Skylar. What in God's name did you do? The police are there. Ethan is being harassed. How could you call the police on your own brother? You absolute monster. What is wrong with you? Her voice was a tidal wave of manufactured indignation, completely ignoring her own role in the event. Her first instinct wasn't worry for my property, but rage over Ethan's inconvenience. The immediate attack confirmed the dynamic, blame the victim, the police are there because a trespass report was filed against two individuals illegally attempting to access a secured, private property. They are not my guests. They are your criminals. My cold, legalistic language immediately punctured her theatrical rage. I wasn't the emotional daughter anymore, I was the property owner, speaking facts. I had exchanged emotion for power. Moem, defensive, stopped talking like a lawyer. You know Ethan needed the house. You have no heart, Skylar. You have too much, you're rich, he's destitute. This is what family does. You were supposed to help him, not destroy him. We gave you life, this is what you owe us. Her claim of ownership over my life and assets was explicit, finally out in the open. The core betrayal, spoken aloud for the first time. That was the moment of absolute clarity. It wasn't about the beach house, or Ethan's debt, or my code. It was about their belief that my life, my resources, my success, my very existence, was a communal asset that they could exploit at will. They didn't see me as a person, they saw me as a piggy bank with a job. The lifetime of dismissal crystallized into one perfect, painful truth. You had no right, Mom. The day you told me to cover Ethan's poker losses with my college fund, you lost the right to speak for me. The day you gave away the security code to my only private asset, you became a criminal accessory. I am not your resource. I am not his safety net. My answer is no. The line was drawn. Permanently. Moem, lowered, menacing. You will regret this, Skylar. You will regret turning your back on your family. We are all you have. Where do you think you'll go when you need help? The familiar threat, isolation, was her last weapon. She was trying to leverage my fear of loneliness against my need for self-preservation. The threat was empty. I was already alone, but now I was free. I let her threat hang in the air for a moment. Then I said, I am a senior manager, Mom. I have perfect credit. I don't need help. And I won't be paying Ethan's bail or his hotel. The sound of her stunned silence was the final confirmation of my emancipation. I chose the cold, safe reality of independence over the warm, destructive illusion of family. The call was a formality. My decision was final. MOM, tearful, manipulative, but Skylar, your father and I, we are getting old. We need you to be here. We need you to forgive him. Don't do this. Please, think about your family. She shifted from anger to tears instantly, the classic move. But the tears were for her own lost power, not for my well-being. I had watched this performance too many times to be moved. Mom, this conversation is over. You chose your son over my rights. I chose my self-respect over your approval. Do not call me again unless it is through a lawyer to discuss transferring the deed of the property you illegally tried to seize. Goodbye. I didn't wait for her reply. I hung up the phone. The physical distance was now a permanent emotional canyon. The chapter of family drama closed with a decisive click. I felt a wave of peace I hadn't known since childhood. The battle was over. The family system that had held me hostage for so long was finally broken. I was free. I was completely alone, but I was in control of my own life, my finances, and my dignity. The revenge wasn't the police or the alarm. The revenge was my lasting independence. I had finally chosen myself. But I knew the story wasn't completely over. Toxic families don't fade away, they regroup and retaliate. Mom would use every emotional weapon she had left to manipulate my father and the rest of the extended family against me. I had to preempt their narrative. The emotional reckoning was done, but the PR war was about to begin. I had to fortify my emotional borders. I had faced down the greatest source of pain and exploitation in my life. I had won my freedom. But how do you live with the knowledge that your own mother would brand you a monster to save her favorite son? Will Skylar ever find true peace, or will the ghost of her toxic family continue to haunt her independence? That, my friends, is the next chapter. I was drafting a cold, clean email to my lawyer when the phone rang again. It wasn't Mom, who was likely still in hysterics. It was Ethan. This was unprecedented. Ethan never called me directly unless Mom forced him. This call wasn't a demand, it was a desperate reaction to his situation. I let it ring 3 times, basking in the profound shift in power. For the first time, Ethan needed me more than I needed his approval. Yes, Ethan? Ethan, strained, hushed. Skylar, listen to me. They let us go, but they took all our information. The dog is freaking out. We're stranded at a gas station 50 miles away. Please, just give me the new code. I swear we'll be out by Monday. Just let us in for the night. His voice was void of his usual arrogance. The entitlement was replaced by genuine, desperate fear of the consequences. The golden boy was begging. It tasted like sweet justice. Ethan, I'm currently talking to my lawyer about the attempted theft of my property. You are lucky I haven't filed charges yet. If you want the dog to stop freaking out, get in the car and drive the other 200 miles back to Mom's house. You will never, under any circumstances, access that house. Your free ride ended tonight. Get a hotel, get a job, get a life. But get off my property. What was the final, devastating blow Skylar delivered that silenced her brother for good? Ethan, wheedling Skylar, please. Don't be like this. You're my little sister. I changed your diapers. Remember all those Christmases? Mom is devastated. If we have to sleep in the car, Chloe is going to leave me, and I'll lose everything. This isn't fair. You're supposed to be my family. He was cycling through his greatest hits of manipulation. The attempt to weaponize nostalgia was pathetic, but familiar. I simply let him talk, recording every word in my mind. The fair thing, Ethan, would have been for you to honor your debt and for Mom not to conspire with you to steal my property. Your homelessness is a consequence of your choices, not my obligation. I suggest you contact the people who actually helped you, your loan sharks. They might be more sympathetic than the sister you tried to ruin. The truth was sharper than any lie. Ethan, yelling, don't talk about loan sharks. If you do this, I will tell everyone. I'll tell Dad you never visit. I'll tell all the relatives you called the police on me. They'll hate you. You'll be cut off. You will have no family left, Skylar. He reverted to the core family threat, isolation and reputational damage. It was the desperate thrash of a drowning man. He was playing his final, weakest card. Go ahead, Ethan. Tell them everything. But first, tell them this. I have the security footage of you attempting forced entry. I have the police report filed against you. I have Mom's text message confirming she gave you my key. And I have the legal documents showing you are about to lose your ability to declare bankruptcy on your debts. The bankruptcy threat was the nuclear option. The silence on the line was instant and total. That last legal threat, about his bankruptcy filing, hit him harder than the police siren. He thought his sister was just a rich pushover. He had just discovered she was a calculated, financially powerful opponent who had done her homework. He realized I wasn't just locking a door, I was slamming the door on his last escape route. He had no response. The golden boy was finally silenced. You have exactly 1 hour to leave the area of my property, or I will file the full charges, including Mom's conspiracy. This is the last time you will hear my voice. Do not contact me again, or the next call will be to the authorities. Goodbye, Ethan. I hung up. I didn't feel rage or sadness. I felt the cold, clear relief of a surgeon who had successfully removed a toxic tumor. The family tie was severed, not with emotion, but with the sharp precision of a legal document. But what happened to Ethan and Chloe? Did they actually lose everything? And what was my father's response to the divorce of his family? I went back to my email, my heart rate finally dropping. I didn't waste a second thinking about Ethan's despair or Mom's tears. I focused on the facts, property lines, legal consequences, and the unbreachable firewall of my finances. I had defended my home, my life, and my right to exist outside their entitled narrative. The cost was my family. But the reward was my entire future. I had finally bought my peace. The resolution was cold, but it was mine. I finally understood the pattern. Ethan wasn't just my brother, he was the golden child, the perfect narrative Mom and Dad used to mask their own failings. I was the scapegoat, the one who had to be selfish, cold, and ambitious, all the things they couldn't control. The conflict was never about money or a house, it was about protecting the family's twisted self-image. I was the truth they couldn't face. The ultimate price of my independence was exactly what they had threatened, complete isolation. They would circulate the story of my cruelty, painting me as the heartless, greedy daughter who called the police on her own kin. I would never be invited to another holiday dinner, and that was okay. I traded a place at a toxic table for the peace of eating alone. The silence was cleaner than their drama. The security system, the police, the cold phone calls, those were just tactics. The true revenge was the fact that I never needed them again. My house was secure, my finances were intact, and my self-worth was finally derived from my own achievements, not their hollow approval. My success was their punishment. My boundaries were my victory. The long game was won by walking away. This story isn't just about a sibling rivalry or a beach house. It's a blueprint for anyone trapped in a toxic family dynamic, forced to play the part of the ATM or the punching bag. It teaches a vital lesson. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to cut the line. You are allowed to protect your assets, your sanity, and your future from the people who claim to love you most. So, what does life after the bomb drop actually look like? Did Skylar ever hear from her father, and does she finally return to the beach house? The end of the story is the beginning of a new life. The first call was to my lawyer. Yes, I need to proceed with the legal letter to my parents. No, I will not drop the trespassing report. The legal boundary must be absolute. I confirmed the terms. Any further contact from my family must be channeled through his office. My verbal boundaries were now codified into legal documents. I had exchanged my emotional shield for a concrete legal wall. I spent the next hour updating every financial password, transferring funds, and setting up two-factor authentication on every single account. The financial vulnerability that my mother and Ethan had so casually tried to exploit was sealed off permanently. They had taught me the hard lesson that trust is a security risk. My digital life was now as guarded as my beach house. The final call was to a real estate agent near the beach house. I want to list it. Yes, immediately. I want the maximum possible visibility. I wasn't selling it because I needed the money. I was selling it because the house had become a physical, painful magnet for their toxicity. It was a beautiful property, but it was poisoned by their greed. Selling the house meant selling the last piece of the past. My last task was the hardest. Scrolling through my phone, I deleted every single photo of Ethan, Mom, and Dad. Not in anger, but in a quiet, necessary act of digital cleansing. There was no going back. The past was a narrative I was finally free to stop retelling. I was replacing the burden of memory with the light of my future. The liberation was absolute and utterly silent. I looked out at the city lights of Seattle, my true home. The chaos of the past week, the panic, the calls, the alarm, had confirmed everything I needed to know. I had achieved more than revenge. I had achieved sovereignty over my own existence. I was no longer defined by my family's expectations or their need for a financial bailout. The war was internal, and I had finally won. The story of my revenge ends here, not with a bang, but with a firm, closed door and a sold sign. But for anyone who has been there, you know the journey of recovery is long. Did I ever fully recover from the pain of my mother's ultimate betrayal? And what message did my father send me when the beach house officially sold? The legal letter was received. The reaction was exactly as predicted, a torrent of manipulative, guilt-tripping text messages and emails. Mom's strategy was to shift from direct attack to victimhood, flooding my inbox with emotional pleas. Your father is so upset he can't sleep. How can you do this to your own blood? We just wanted to save Ethan. Classic toxic escalation. If you build a firewall, they try to bypass it with a flood. I deleted them all unread, maintaining my quarantine. The collateral damage started immediately. A distant cousin messaged me, "I heard you had Ethan arrested on Thanksgiving property." That's cold, Skylar. I didn't defend myself. I knew Mom was meticulously controlling the narrative. I was officially the family pariah, the villain of the story she needed to tell. Their opinion no longer paid my bills or secured my future. I was on a video call for work when my doorbell buzzed. I froze. I never had visitors. My heart immediately started pounding. Was this an escalation? Did Ethan drive up here? I checked the security camera feed. It wasn't Ethan. It was my father. And he was alone. The sight of him, unannounced, was a shockwave. I opened the door. Dad looked 20 years older than the last time I saw him. He didn't yell or demand. He just looked worn down, holding a single, small, battered suitcase. "Skylar," he said, his voice flat. "I need to talk to you." I took the red-eye flight. "Your mother thinks I'm with a client." His mere presence confirmed the gravity of the crisis. "Dad. You can come in. But know this, I am not going to drop the report, and the beach house is being sold. If you are here to mediate for Mom or Ethan, this conversation will be short." I maintained my physical and emotional boundary. I wasn't allowing the old dynamic of compliance to take hold. He nodded, a gesture of quiet surrender. "Dad," low voice, "I didn't come here for them, Skylar. I came here for me. Your mother told me you called the police on Ethan, but she didn't tell me why. And when I read the police report from your lawyer, the one that mentions her conspiracy, I finally had to face the truth I've been running from for 30 years. This was the pivot. The unexpected alliance. Dad, weary, she controlled everything, Skylar. The money, the narrative, who was good and who was bad. She always protected Ethan because he was weak and easier to manage. You were strong, so you became the enemy. I let her do it because it was easier than facing her manipulation. He was finally admitting his complicity. I saw not the imposing family patriarch, but a broken man who had lived his entire life under the thumb of his own wife's emotional tyranny. My mother hadn't just used Ethan and me, she had paralyzed my father for decades. The revenge wasn't just against the golden child, it was the domino that finally toppled the entire, rotten system. My act of self-preservation had freed him. 2. Dad, quiet, I need to know, Skylar. Was there ever a point, even before the alarm, that you would have helped Ethan? If I had intervened earlier? I knew the answer, but I softened it. I would have, Dad. But you didn't. And Mom knew you wouldn't. He understood the unspoken truth. His inaction was the real betrayal. He opened the small suitcase. Inside, I saw two things, a worn photo album and a thick manila envelope. What was in the envelope, and why was he carrying that photo album? Dad, sincere, the album is from your childhood. Real memories, not the stories we told ourselves. And the envelope, it's a check. It's what I have left. I want to buy your beach house. I want to buy it from you. At full list price, so it doesn't fall into the hands of a stranger. I want to protect the only real asset this family has left, you, Skylar. His offer, a final, protective gesture, stunned me into silence. He wasn't trying to save the house, he was trying to save me from the family. His desperate act of fatherhood was the resolution I never knew I needed. The betrayal was not total, one true bond remained. This wasn't just money, it was a desperate plea for connection and a silent admission of decades of failure. I looked at the check, then at the album, then at my tired father. The revenge was over. The healing had begun. I had won the battle for my independence, and in the process, I had salvaged the one relationship worth saving. The ultimate end of this story isn't the court date, but the restoration of one small, sacred piece of my past. Did Skylar accept the offer, and did her father ever return to her mother after this meeting? I carefully opened the worn photo album. It wasn't the staged family portraits Mom hung up, it was full of candid, blurry shots of me as a child, building sandcastles at the beach house, laughing with Dad. It was a physical archive of the true, buried history of our relationship. I felt a sudden, sharp ache, not of loss, but of the memory of what could have been. He had saved these memories, even when he couldn't save me. Dad, quiet, I know I failed you, Skylar. I let her turn you into the villain so I didn't have to fight. I'm sorry. The apology wasn't a grand, cinematic moment, it was whispered, humble, and exhausted. I realized his silence over the decades was never hate. It was deep, crippling cowardice. His weakness was his truth, my strength was my own. Dad, I accept your offer. I will sell you the house at the list price, but under one condition: it must be put solely in your name, and you must never, ever give the key or the code to Mom or Ethan again. This is a transaction, not a favor. It was a contract built on the ruins of broken trust. My boundary held, even in this moment of warmth. Dad, genuine smile done. I will hold the house as a fortress. For me, and maybe, for you, one day. His smile was relief. By taking a stand, I had inadvertently given him the strength to face his own liberation. The financial transaction was the physical manifestation of his divorce from his wife's control. 2 family members were free, one still clung to the wreckage. He stood up, and for the first time in years, he hugged me tightly. It wasn't the mandatory, superficial hug of holidays past. It was a long, deep embrace that conveyed forgiveness, regret, and a mutual understanding of shared trauma. The debt of his past inaction was paid, not in money, but in honest connection. The true resolution was personal, not procedural. Dad left Seattle alone, a free man. I had the photo album, the check, and my unshakable boundaries. The story of family revenge was now complete. But for you, the audience, one critical question remains. What happens to Mom when she realizes both her children, the golden child and the scapegoat, are now financially and emotionally out of her control? Life after the final showdown was not dramatic, it was beautifully, profoundly quiet. The legal boundaries held, enforced by my lawyer and my father's intervention. No calls, no texts, no guilt trips. I realized that silence wasn't a punishment, it was the ultimate luxury of freedom. My revenge had bought me peace. I occasionally checked the public record. Ethan and Chloe, having lost the house money and their credit, officially lost everything. There was a small article about him, not a financial whiz, but a local businessman facing bankruptcy. He had finally achieved the rock bottom he had spent his life avoiding, all thanks to his own choices. My empathy was minimal, my vindication was complete. Mom, stripped of her 2 primary sources of control, her golden child and her scapegoat, was left with the true, quiet reality of her life, a large, empty house and a distant husband. She had no one to manipulate and no drama to orchestrate. The true punishment for her was having to sit with herself. She lost her audience, and therefore, she lost her power. Dad, on the other hand, thrived. He sent me a photo. He was painting the beach house's porch a bright new color. He had filed for legal separation, citing the emotional abuse and Mom's financial conspiracy. My fight had given him the leverage he needed to finally exit his own prison. He was rebuilding his life, one brushstroke at a time. 6 months later, I visited the beach house. Dad was there. It felt different. The air was lighter, the energy was clean. I walked the sand, no longer feeling the shadow of obligation or fear. I was not there to reclaim it, but to say goodbye to the old wounds. The house was a monument to my battle, not my inheritance. The true value was the lesson learned, not the property itself. I didn't need the house to prove my worth. Dad didn't need to apologize again. We had transcended the family roles. We were simply 2 adults, navigating the wreckage left by one person's refusal to evolve. He gave me a key, not to stay, but as a symbolic gesture. Skylar, soft keep it, Dad. It looks beautiful on you. My victory was his liberation. My story is proof that saying no to manipulation is the single most powerful act of self-love. You are not obligated to be an ATM. You are not obligated to be a punching bag. And you are absolutely not obligated to be silent when your boundaries are violated. Protect your assets, protect your peace, and protect yourself. Your silence is their biggest weapon, take it away. Mom, facing life alone, made one last desperate attempt. She contacted Ethan, begging him to come back to the big house. Ethan, who was now truly broke and facing legal trouble, was just as angry at her as he was at me. She had finally isolated herself, the consequence of decades of playing the victim and the puppet master. The domino effect of my revenge was complete. I was free. Dad was free. Ethan was paying the price. And Mom was alone. To anyone watching this who is the black sheep, the scapegoat, or the family ATM, you are allowed to choose peace over performance. Your life is yours. You have the right to financial security and emotional safety. Do your homework, set your legal boundaries, and walk away without guilt. If you loved this story of standing up to toxic family, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into family redemption stories. What price did Ethan ultimately pay for his greed, and was Chloe still by his side? Tell me in the comments what boundaries you had to set with your own family. It had been a year of beautiful, unburdened peace. My boundaries felt like second nature. Then, the universe decided to test me again. I was working at my favorite cafe when a familiar voice said, "Skylar? Is that really you?" It was Mark, my ex-fiancé, the man I left to escape my family's financial pressure. Our past was complicated, intertwined with the very drama I had escaped. He looked successful and, surprisingly, relaxed. "Mark, curious you look, different, Skylar. Happier. The last I heard, things were messy with your family, they were. But I cleaned it up. I had to let go of the family I thought I had to build the life I deserved. I didn't hide the truth, but I didn't dwell on the pain. I was demonstrating my growth. I was no longer the girl seeking his validation. My confidence was the quiet trophy of my victory. I actually ran into Ethan a few months ago. It was rough. He was working at a fast food place, saying something about losing everything. He blamed you. Ethan has always blamed others, Mark. His choices led him there, not me. I simply stopped enabling him. The mention of Ethan no longer brought a pang of guilt, only a firm resolve. I refused to let his victim narrative invade my peace. He was a consequence, I was a creator. When I saw him, he gave me this. He said he couldn't mail it because he didn't know your address. Said it was his final amends. Mark handed me a thin, sealed envelope with my name written in Ethan's shaky script. After a year of total silence, this was a breach of my quarantine, delivered by the most unlikely messenger. I hesitated. Did I really want to open that door again? Later that day, I opened it. It wasn't a threat. It was a single, crumpled page. "Skylar, I screwed up. You did what I couldn't. Thanks for stopping me." No apology for Mom, no mention of the money, just a raw, concise acceptance of responsibility. It was the closure I never knew I was waiting for, delivered in the language of defeat. The debt of guilt was finally settled. Ethan's note allowed me to fully close that chapter and open a new one. I texted Mark, "Thanks for the delivery. It meant a lot. Maybe we can catch up without a family crisis hanging over us?" Our coffee became dinner. The old problems were gone. The new Skylar was ready for a relationship based on mutual respect and clarity, not on family-mandated status. The scapegoat had won the girl. The future was finally brighter than the past. I got one final, official communication, an email from my lawyer. "Your mother has filed for divorce from your father. She is demanding the Seattle apartment, the beach house, and half of your dad's retirement. Her final act of control was to try and destroy the two people who escaped her. Dad, however, was prepared. He had a solid case built on her financial and emotional abuse. The battle was no longer mine, but the quiet satisfaction was immense. The system was collapsing completely. The divorce protected the beach house. Because the sale from me to Dad was a clean, separate transaction, it was deemed his separate property. He fixed it up, not as an investment, but as a safe place for his new, independent life. He called it the Schuyler House, a tribute to the daughter who had forced him toward freedom. The house was no longer a family prison, it was a symbol of resistance and a new legacy. The story of revenge had become a story of redemption. I learned that my power was not in reacting to their drama, but in walking away and building a life so full, so joyful, and so controlled by me that their poison simply couldn't touch it. Mark and I eventually moved in together. We are planning a trip to a new beach, one with no history. My revenge was effective, but my true victory was the happiness I found in my independence. So, what became of Chloe, Ethan's partner? Did she leave him? Or did she stick around for his ultimate downfall? We've covered a lot of ground: the betrayal, the revenge, the redemption of my father, and the peace I found with Mark. But there's one loose thread, one last question you all keep asking: what happened to Chloe? Ethan's partner, the one who tried to sell the furniture behind my back. Did she stick around for the bitter end? The final piece of the domino chain. Chloe wasn't built for rock bottom. When the bankruptcy was finalized, the apartment was gone, and Ethan started working fast food shifts. She did what anyone logical would do. She left. She realized she hadn't married a golden child, she'd married a financial burden with a victim complex. The illusion was shattered for her. 2. Ethan lost his marriage, his money, his career, and his mother's unconditional support, all within a year. His entire life was built on a foundation of unearned privilege, and when that foundation was removed, the structure collapsed entirely. He was the living proof that karma is not always subtle. Sometimes, it hits you with a legal notice and an eviction. The cost of his entitlement was total isolation. My goal was never to destroy Ethan. My goal was to save myself. But the beauty of setting a firm boundary is that it forces everyone else to find their own true footing. My revenge was not an act of hate, it was an act of profound self-respect that restored balance to a broken system. Self-care is the best kind of revenge. The golden child and the scapegoat narrative is officially over. We are just two adults, one navigating financial ruin, the other building a life of abundance and peace. The script has been flipped, the roles are dissolved, and the stage is clear. My biggest victory was walking away from the constant performance they demanded. The end of the family drama is the start of my life. My story isn't just about a beach house or a bad brother. It's about finding the courage to save yourself. If you're the family scapegoat or the emotional punching bag, I want you to know that your life can change. Your past doesn't define your future, your boundaries do. This is the turning point for your own story. Here are the 5 most important lessons I learned. Lesson 1: formalize your boundaries. Emotional conversations go nowhere with toxic people. They only understand written, legal language. Never rely on verbal agreements, get everything in writing and secure your assets legally. Protect what's yours with concrete proof, not just hope. Legal documents are your shield. Lesson 2: guilt is a tool, not a feeling. When your family tries to weaponize your emotions, remember that guilt is only valid if you've done something wrong. You haven't. And lesson 3: financial independence is the ultimate armor. They cannot control you if they cannot pay for you. Your money is your freedom. Invest in your own self-sufficiency. Lesson 4: you cannot fix the system from within. The moment you choose peace, you must be willing to walk away from the toxicity. You are not responsible for their healing. Finally, Lesson 5. The best revenge is a well-lived life. Focus on building a life so beautiful and so peaceful that their drama becomes irrelevant noise. Your peace is your victory. If this story resonated with you, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button. Share your experiences in the comments below. Which of these 5 lessons was the hardest for you to learn? We are a community of survivors, and your voice matters. Take the first step today. Don't wait for permission to be happy. Your peace is waiting.